So in the second half of this video, we'll be looking at how we'll organize our argument by smaller topics and paragraphs, other cueing devices. So when you think about the role of cueing devices, you can compare them to, say, the ligaments and tendons in the human body. Cueing devices act as connective tissue, pulling your whole argument together and relating it back to your thesis. Topic sentences connect your thesis to your subtopics, which are detailed in smaller sections of your essay or paragraphs. These encapsulate individual topics and also contain explanations of these points and evidence that backs them up. And that evidence, of course, proves your thesis. In this way, cueing devices, if used properly, ensure that everything from each paragraph to each small piece of evidence is directly relevant to the thesis statement. They tie everything together. While a thesis relates the topic and stance of the entire paper, a topic sentence, which is possibly the second most important cueing device, relates the topic and stance of a subtopic. So a subtopic is a small piece of your whole argument. Subtopics make the greater argument digestible, and they always relate directly to the thesis statement. Sometimes they can be called points, subpoints, claims, or reasons, but they're all pretty much the same thing. A subtopic is often relayed in the first sentence of the body paragraph, and that's what a topic sentence is. Sometimes, however, especially in longer papers, a subtopic is instead laid out as the title or header of a smaller section. Paragraphs within the section, in turn, lay out small pieces of that subtopic, and then those paragraphs will have their own topic sentences. Using headers instead of just topic sentences and paragraphs is a way to keep longer works more organized and easier to follow. However, in shorter papers, the paragraph is the most essential organizational tool. So each paragraph has its own idea that's laid out at the beginning and discussed throughout. Convincing arguments provide some evidence in all or almost all paragraphs. So that evidence is the support, what we call the support, for the claim of that paragraph. And again, the claim, what you're setting out to argue, is laid out in the topic sentence at the beginning of the paragraph. So paragraph usage and whether there is one completely unique topic per paragraph, again, will vary with paper length. Longer papers will have subsections that have their own header, and that will function like a higher ranking topic sentence, whereas shorter papers, like the kind that you might write in an English comp class, will usually not have these subsections or subheaders and will just use the paragraphs with their topic sentences to organize those individual ideas. While topic sentences help define what each paragraph will talk about, transitions make sure that the flow from each idea to the next proceeds smoothly and in a logical way. In other words, papers without transitions often feel choppy and hard to read or see the connection between ideas. In addition to stating the subtopic, topic sentences often act as transitions from one paragraph to the next, allowing readers to see the logical connection between your points. Topic sentences not only transition by restating ideas from the previous paragraph in conjunction with the new topic, but also by using transitional phrases. These are words that show the relationship between points. If the paragraphs are building the argument together, or if you're exploring the complexities or ins and outs of an issue, or introducing an opposing argument, you'll use different transitional phrases. Building words include things like thus, therefore, in addition or additionally, furthermore, as well as, and because, since. They are building your argument one point off of another point, in addition, or because of this, therefore that. What I've turned negating words are showing those complexities or introducing perhaps an opposing position. These are words like however, although, unfortunately, conversely, on one hand, on the other hand, nevertheless, and so forth. So I've talked a lot about topic sentences in really vague and broad terms, but that's not really useful in thinking how am I going to actually use this cueing device in my paper. So I'm going to provide you with a whole bunch of examples of actual topic sentences. And these are all topic sentences with transitions. Now, note that not all topic sentences contain clear transitional words, and not every single topic sentence requires a transition. If it's obvious how one paragraph relates to another paragraph, you might not need to provide a transition because the reader won't need one. And likewise, a transition can also appear at the end of the previous paragraph. So already at the bottom of a previous paragraph, the author could be moving towards the next point, so that the topic sentence itself, if it also contained a transition, it might feel redundant. So here's the first topic sentence we're going to look at, and this is another one by Raj Patel. While the environment is tweaked in a range of different ways, the subject most constantly manipulated and prodded is, of course, us. So here we see the word while, and that is one of those transitional words that is negating. What this means is that what was talked about in the previous paragraph is probably going to be different than what is being talked about in the next paragraph. And once you think about it in those terms, you can almost predict what's going to come next, or think back without even reading it what came before. So in this case, what came before is the first part of the sentence. The environment is tweaked in a range of different ways. And what's going to come next? The subject most constantly manipulated and prodded, of course, is us. So the first paragraph probably talked about how the environment, in this case of grocery stores, is modified in a whole bunch of different ways, and talked about that and probably gave some examples. The following paragraph we can predict, the paragraph for which this topic sentence lays out the claim, is probably going to talk about the way that we are manipulated ourselves. All right, let's take a look at another one. So Raj Patel is kind of like the king of topic sentences. He's really good at them. And here's another example of a great topic sentence from his reading. Now, having railed against supermarkets, it may seem a bit odd to complain that poor people don't have access to them. Again, we have one of those more negating words, now. What that means is that we talked about something, now we're talking about something else. So what did we talk about first in the previous paragraph? We railed against supermarkets. What are we talking about now? Now we're going to complain that poor people don't have access to them. And he's actually telling us, yeah, I can see that it might seem weird to do so. I acknowledge that there might be people who think this is a kind of a problematic thing to argue. I can see that. And he's kind of qualifying his statement, making us sure that he's aware of how problematic it sounds, but he probably has a good reason for doing it anyway. So here's one more example where we're looking at the ins and outs of an issue. And the reason why there are so many topic sentences with these transitional words is because when you're shifting gears, you need to cue to your reader, more importantly than ever, that you're going to be changing the course of your argument. And that's why we so often will see the negating transitional words, now, however, or in this case, despite, to show that we're shifting gears. We're going to be heading in a new direction with our discussion. So this one is from Marion Nestle, and she writes, despite such advice, the reaction of the food industry to the guidelines was largely favorable, with a few exceptions. So we understand that the first paragraph was talking about some kind of advice. The second one is going to talk about how the food industry reactions were largely favorable. It's using the same kind of formula. The first half of the sentence recaps what was previously said, the second half forecasts what's going to be coming, and the transitional word despite shows the relationship between those two ideas. But even though we're more often likely to use the transitional phrases that change direction, showing the complexities, those however, despite the fact kind of transitional words, we also will use transitional words to show that we're building points or we're relating points that in some way are connected to each other. So this one is from Frances Moore Lappe, and she writes, "Not only does the fast food come salt-laden, so do many processed foods." In this way, we're showing that we're building towards a discussion of salt and how fast food is salt-laden, what our previous paragraph talked about, but also our subsequent paragraph, processed foods, come salt-laden as well, showing that we're building a discussion on salt in unhealthy foods. So just as a recap, topic sentences really set the discussion. They guide paragraphs, which is another major cueing device. They help the paragraph contain or be contained to just one specific topic, and they make sure everything within that paragraph relates back to the thesis. In well-organized writing, whatever follows that first sentence or two where the topic is laid out is the discussion, reasoning, and evidence behind that point. It's all related. In this way, a topic sentence functions like a mini thesis of a paragraph. It's a bridge between your evidence and your main argument so that all of your evidence, again, relates back to your thesis. So a typical paragraph will look like this. You'll have a topic sentence which expresses a subpoint. Then you'll have a little bit more about this topic. Then maybe a quote, a statistic, a bit of paraphrase from a source, or something else discussing and providing evidence for that point, of course with a citation. And maybe you'll have another one of these, another piece of evidence. So you're synthesizing your sources and establishing a pattern of evidence for your point. Afterwards, you'll have a sentence that wraps up the discussion and possibly points toward a new point. And then you'll just repeat the whole process over and over again until you reach the end of your paper or your conclusion. As you can see, topic sentences are a huge part of this, and they really set the discussion for the entire paper. So, as we proceed through the semester and you're doing more and more reading, it's always a good idea to look for these things in our class readings, as well as in our films. So, things that you would want to look for would be a thesis statement or the statement of the main point, headings and subheadings or subtitles, paragraphs that have topic sentences that tell the reader what the paragraph's about, discussion and evidence of that topic, and a sentence that wraps things up and or points things to the next paragraph. But as you're reading, keep in mind that not all paragraphs will look exactly like this. There's always room for a little bit of diversity in your paragraph forms, and these are usually done for stylistic purposes. So if a topic sentence doesn't have a transition from the previous paragraph, think about why the author chose not to do this. Or if a paragraph seems pretty short or doesn't have a piece of evidence, what is the purpose of this paragraph if it's not to fully convey one of those subtopics? The most useful way to learn how to write is simply by reading other people's quality writing. So if you pay attention to these things in other people's writing, it will only make your writing that much more effective. Have a good one, and till next time.